is to go off script, to improvise, freestyle, or act on instinct. Hi, welcome back to Ad Lib with Liv. It's been a couple weeks since the last episode. I'm so happy to be back in this space and connecting with you all wherever you are in the world. And yeah, we're coming to the close of 2025. I'm so ready for the new year. So ready for 2026. Couldn't come sooner, although it came really soon. I know for so many of us, this last year was quick but a little bit heavy, and so I think this like new opening to the new year is just what so many people need, and I'm hoping it's kind of a turn around the corner on many levels, socially, politically, economically, personally, spiritually. I think there's a lot to look forward to in this next year that we get to consciously kind of step into. So I'm excited to chat with you today because it's a time to, well, it's always a reflection time with me, because that's what so much of this podcast is storytelling and reflecting and kind of reframing, also rewriting the script, reframing how we move through our lives and our different situations and different challenges and different opportunities. And so this episode is really a continuation of the last few episodes, which have just been really significant for me because these are the things that I love to talk about and the things that I think are so important right now. So continuing the conversation of intimacy and how we approach intimacy in our lives, I want to talk about lifestyle in general and how we can create a more intimate and connected lifestyle, meaning how we build habits and how we build awareness in our everyday rituals and responsibilities. So for me, that's really like the reason I've traveled to different countries and, had these international experiences and continue to be based away from the US and in another country, specifically Latin America, is because lifestyle has always been the most important thing to me. Lifestyle meaning, yeah, the cliche work-life balance, obviamente, but also how I live my life on an everyday basis means more to me than grinding 9 to 5. I would rather have like little moments in my everyday that are meaningful to me. Building a meaningful life looks different for each of us, right? So I want to go into some of the things that I think are really important to create that work-life balance, yes, but also just to create a little bit of magic and excitement and intimacy. Not even excitement, but yeah, I mean a little bit of excitement. I like my adrenalina, I like my dopamina, but also creating intimacy and meaning in those everyday experiences. Because I know coming from the grind of the United States, specifically when I lived in Los Angeles, and also going back home to Colorado, I also see this same kind of energy. I would say a little bit less in Colorado than in LA, but obviously LA is a massive city and it's also a hard city to live in for so many people. There's economical and social disparities. It's a very expensive place to live and it's a very spread out city, so you need a lot of resources to make that lifestyle work. So I remember just feeling like, okay, work is the most important thing for everyone here. You meet someone and that's the first thing they ask you. What do you do? What's your industry? That's the chit chat. And then the second most important thing is how you got where you are, meaning not career wise, meaning literally transportation. Oh, what highway did you take? Did you take an Uber? Did you drive yourself? How was the parking? It's like such a thing there. And I was fully immersed in car culture and the hustle and the grind as well, because that's kind of the thing about living in a big city is like people are trying to make it, especially LA. It's Hollywood. It's the city of angels. It's where dreams go to be manifest. And there's also a heavy energy of, I will do anything to get where I want to go. And so I think a lot of people sacrificed their everyday like quality of life in order to get to those places. Now, I also always want to recognize that my perspective is coming from a place of privilege. So I know that what I'm talking about in this conversation is unique to my privilege. And not everybody has the luxury to live a slower life and to opt out of that kind of competitive mentality and that hustle and grind, because some people are literally trying to put food on the table for their kids and make their dreams work and all the things. So I recognize that wholeheartedly. This is coming from a single woman who has the privilege and the opportunity to kind of rewrite my story and my script. But I would also say that there are some things that you can take from this conversation that anybody could bring into their life to practice a little bit of slowness and a little bit more intimacy with living, because that's what we're here to do, man. We're here to live. And that conversation of work and hustle is always like been a little itchy for me, because I just think we've like lost the plot somewhere, where we have invested so much in the end goal of getting this dream to happen and getting this goal to be met and buying the house and getting the car. And, a lot of consumption is happens around this conversation. And so my intention is to kind of pull away from that kind of consumer driven intentionality and come back to a place of intimacy with living itself. So, what does that mean to live a more intimate life, to be more connected to self and the things and people and environment around you? So, I didn't know that Latin America would be the lifestyle for me. I had a feeling based on books I've read and people I've talked to that it was a place that resonated, but I had to go there myself to figure that out, because I'm an experiential learner. I got to touch it, taste it, lick it, smell it, feel it. Todo. And so when I booked a one-way flight to Medellin, Colombia in 2019, I got to experience Latin America really for the first time as someone who was living there and someone who could like really get my hands dirty and like be in the space and be with the people and understand, okay, is this calling that I had to be in this part of the world, was it a fever dream? Was it escapism? Or was it really because there were elements that I connected to in order to create a lifestyle that really was reflective of me and how I want to live? And the answer, obviamente, was yes, Latin America is my place. At least for now. There's so much about this part of the world that speaks to me. And I want to break down a few of those things. So for me, intimacy is the ability to have your undivided attention on something or someone. It's that moment where you feel completely connected to a place, to a meal, to a piece of art, to a person, to an energy. It's when you allow yourself to see further than you've seen before by being present and being patient, and also being seen, which is why relational intimacy is so powerful, because we're witnessing someone else and ourselves in the moment while also being witnessed by that other person, that reflection. And I think that intimacy goes way beyond the relational connection, and it goes into everything: our relationship to food, our connection to clothing and how we purchase goods and how we feel when we wear those things. Intimacy is taking our time with our day, giving yourself a moment away from all the stimulation and just being present. It's why I think meditation is like one of the deepest forms of intimacy, because you're allowing yourself to witness yourself in a singular moment without all this external stim. I think intimacy for me is also being willing to see what's happening around you and within you in any given moment, and not turning away at the sight of discomfort or the sight or the feeling of edginess. And yeah, so I've always wanted to create a life that like embodies that. This desire to be more intimate with life itself is because I'm naturally just a very curious person. I tend to lean into the conversation, ask the questions, want to know more, want to understand more. naturally my life has been a series of choices that allows me to connect deeper to people, places, environments. I think it's important to mention that I haven't always been met with that same interest in living a curious life, or haven't always been met with people who want to go to those depths with me, whether it's through conversation or through experience or whatever. And it also goes the same for a place. You know, you might move to a place and you want so badly to connect and to feel and to be more connected to this place, whether that's through the people, through the food, through the culture, through the opportunities. But you're not always met with that same availability, right? You can be the most curious person in the world, but if someone or something isn't meeting you halfway, then it's hard for you to get closer to that place. So I think that's why I've been journeying to different cities and different locations in the world, because I'm seeking a place where I can be intimate with life. I can be uncomfortable. And Mexico is such a reflection of that too, which we'll get into in this episode. But getting back to my natural state and who I really am as a person is giving myself permission to be curious and to not feel like, oh, just because this place doesn't embrace me or this relationship doesn't feed me doesn't mean that like I'm the problem, or it doesn't mean that I should back off and not want so much depth. But what it does mean is that, or at least like my interpretation of this is that I want to pivot when that happens. When I'm not being met with that same curiosity and that same like desire for intimacy and connection, I'm like, okay, that's time for me to pivot. And that kind of happened to me when I lived in Costa Rica, although that place gave me so much connection to the land, to community, to food, to my sensuality, to my spirituality. It gave me so much connection. But I was also missing a bigger cultural experience, which is what Mexico City offers me, which is history, art, a diverse food scene, and a really diverse group of people across industries. Costa Rica, Puerto Viejo especialmente, has an amazingly diverse community. But I wanted to be in the city context of where there's more literature and film and those types of conversations. So that's ultimately what brought me here. But I did have an amazing lifestyle there that really reflected back to me so much that's important to me. You know, people pick their own food, they grow their own food, they cook their own food. Like everything is handmade, prepared with love. That's so important to me. So that's one of the categories that I like to look at when it comes to creating a life of intimacy. Where does your food come from? Who's preparing it? Is it sustainable for the community, for the land? How connected do you feel to the food that you're consuming? You know, food is medicine. So having that intimate connection with food felt really important. And I also am someone who likes to prepare my own food. I want to touch my own food before I eat it. It's so grounding for me. It's so important. And so, of course, the food that I touch and I'm like getting, close with, I'm like, where did this travel from? And whose hands did it touch? And who did it impact along the way? And so making my decision to move to Mexico, I knew that I would have access to incredible markets, great food, and I would be able to prepare this food myself. So having like a nice kitchen space is really important to be able to do that. I also knew that the food culture here honors connection. People put their love into their food. It is a love language. And I feel so inspired every day by the level of connection that people have to their ingredients here. You know, especially in Oaxaca, when I lived there last year, I was so amazed at like the connection to the ancestral recipes that people were referencing to prepare their food with. And there was such a knowledge and a care for the process. And that just feels important to me. And I'm inspired by that. And I want to eat food that's prepared that way. So that's a big one. So I invite you to look at your relationship to food in your life. And if you have the opportunity to be selective about what you're consuming, where that food comes from, considering the seasonality of it, considering how far it traveled, considering I don't believe in any of this organic stuff anymore. I feel like it's such a business now that you can't really trust that. So that's why like going to co-ops and going to farmers markets, if possible, is a great way to go. But yeah, again, there's limitations there. We don't have access to everything. But I think that's one big thing. Like my mom always buys me mangoes and tropical fruits when I go back to Boulder, Colorado. And I'm like, and it's so sweet. I'm like, thank you so much. But like, this is not a mango. Like I eat mangoes that taste like literal liquid sunshine. This mango was picked too early, was sitting in a truck, was sitting in a grocery store. I don't know what's on the outside of it, what it's been sprayed with. And yeah, it doesn't really interest me. So it's like where you are is important. So consider like eating a different diet based on where you are. And then when you travel, look at the food in that local area and go crazy like I do in Mexico. I have access to like great tropical fruits, amazing vegetables. And then there's also a lot of imported goods. So I also check that. I'm like, oh, this orange is from Chile. Okay, I'm going to get the local mandarina. And it's oftentimes better. Also buy ugly fruit. The next one is transportation. This has become so important to me as of late because I invested in a bicycle. I have a really cool little city bike that I get around on, and it's made me appreciate life so much more. It means being able to get around without taking up so much space. I think that's also so important. It's like a car is so demanding on the city. Not only does it pollute, but it also takes up physical space to park, to get around on the highways. And I just love the idea of like, I've always loved the idea of having a bike. Now, I had a bike in Costa Rica. I had a little banana bike, a cruiser that I rode for the 4 years that I was there. I mean, I had a basket on the front. I would load it up with my groceries, which consisted of pineapples and mangoes and tomates. And I would cruise around and get everywhere I needed. And I would cruise for miles. So when I moved to Mexico City, I just knew that a bike was in my future. And I was using the city bikes here, but those are a pinche desastre. So much work, especially here in my new neighborhood. Too many people depend on the city bike. So every time you want a bike, it's gone. And every time you come back to return a bike, there's no spaces because everybody's on the same like schedule and it's just local. So I got a bike and I realized why I love it so much is because I get to see, smell, taste, feel the city as I'm moving through it in real time. And instead of being in the safety and the protection of my car and getting to shut out the world while I get to my destination, I get to fully embrace everything. The good, the bad, the ugly. The smells. Sometimes they're wonderful. Oh, there's a tortilleria making amazing tortillas and the smell is perfect. Or a donut shop. Oh my God, don't get me started on the donut aroma. And you also get the smell of sewage and exhaust from a truck going by. So mixed bag of smells. But you also get to see everything that's happening, the intensity of the traffic because you're like in the same lane as these huge trucks and the motos and the scooters. You also get to look at the flowers and notice a new building and a new landmark. And I've run into people in the streets. I'm like, oh my God, hey, how's it going? So it's like this opportunity to really embrace your full surroundings, which for me is a life of intimacy and not like shutting out my environment, but like really embracing all of it. So transportation's a big one. You might not have a choice to be in the car every day. That might be your only option, but I would encourage you to find like new ways, like maybe once a week, take public transportation or see if you can like take a bike ride, even if it's just a cruise, just an enjoyable cruise along a boardwalk or through the city streets and just like be in your environment in a different way. Creating intimacy within community, especially abroad. Now, that's a challenge no matter where you are, right? We can all agree building community is like the most important thing to us as humans, and it can also be the most challenging, especially as someone who's not from a place and is, still learning the language and still learning the customs and trying to find, my community and the people that I really resonate with. That's a challenge. But what intimacy and community has really started to mean for me is like embracing the connections that happen each day. So I find some of my conversations in the streets with random people the most meaningful. Whether it's the girl at the salon that I'm having a chat with about our favorite place to get barbacoa, Or I stop on the street or recently I met this amazing man wearing this full navideño outfit, a sweater with Christmas trees and a red hat and matching leather loafers. And I could tell he was out of breath. So he came and I invited him to come sit next to me to have a coffee and had like the most amazing conversation. He was headed to a posada, which is a traditional party during the Christmas season in Mexico. And yeah, it was just this like, we didn't talk about anything life-changing, but just being able to like make space for those passing interactions is something that has become like really important to me. And I think what it also reflects is that we're not just rushing to get to the place or only seeing what's familiar. It's like this constant embrace of what's happening around you. And sometimes that's challenging. Like I've been robbed before and I'm like, well, that's a form of intimacy. Someone, chasing me with a kitchen knife, trying to steal my bag in the streets of Quito, Ecuador. Yeah, I guess I'm really getting to know a place. But so it can look all kinds of ways. But on a daily basis, especially here in Mexico, I do feel so safe that I can like show up fully as myself and like really embrace what's happening around me. Intimacy and community also is dating, finding yourself, being vulnerable with the people around you that you might feel like a romantic connection with, or, you have a desire to connect with, and allowing yourself to really be interested, allowing yourself to be accessible and be pursued and also be the pursuer. When you move somewhere new, having that, it's just about having that openness in general to be available to find connection and not limit yourself based on, well, I don't know that person, or they seem like someone I wouldn't get along with, like kind of reducing the judgment and allowing people to be who they are, allowing yourself to be who you are, and embracing potential connections along the way. I think so often for me especially, like I can kind of put up some protection around like how much I get to know people, because I think intimacy is so important to me that I sometimes like protect it a little bit. So I'm like, I reserve like how intimate I get with people based on how like safe I feel and how comfortable I am. I'm also really open-minded and I can like talk to anyone, but there is that level of like, I have an edge to where I let people in. And so I'm really working on sharing more, telling more stories openly, being more free with my energy, while also maintaining that like kind of discerning energy. I think I talked about that in a recent episode, is like being so open and so curious and so accepting and all these things, right? Just like this open vessel, but you also have a discerning energy that allows you to say, okay, that's not safe, so we're not going to do that. Or that person seems to have some weird intentions. We're going to be mindful of that. Like not being so naive, being open-minded without that total naivety, because we also do have to like look out for ourselves, and you don't know what people's intentions are. So you got to like give them space to show you who they are while also maintaining like an air of discernment. I think I'm constantly practicing this. So I'm constantly practicing that because it does feel like it's constantly changing. But I do think overall our ability to be more open and more willing to see things that might not be familiar is absolutely an amazing form of intimacy. And I think we can all do this. Like talk to your barista, talk to if you have someone who's like doing construction at your house or your work, or is doing the cleaning, like talk to those people, start a conversation, ask them if they need anything. Waving to your neighbors. We love that. I feel like when I lived in LA, I literally lived in a gated community and I was so cut off from each neighbor because everybody has these walls that separate them. And I really felt that wasn't for me. I was like, this is so, like, I love where I lived and I had this safety, but what is safety when you're cutting off connection? And Latin America, I've said this before, people live out loud. People go to the park to practice Tai Chi and martial arts and to practice dancing and to take literally people take band classes and are like practicing their instruments or doing choreography for a dance. Like people live out loud here. Public spaces are truly spaces where you can go and like be who you are. And it's like, cool, everybody's welcome. And that is so interesting and fascinating and delicious to me. Like I want to be in a place where people are just like expressing themselves. I'm not saying everyone is like this, but the majority are like out and about and it's just in their culture to be expressive and to be sharing that expression. And just love this idea of like experiencing life communally, publicly, and together. And that's why I haven't felt alone here in Mexico. You know, I've had my moments, of course, but in general, I feel connected because of the structure of society, because people are open, people are living out loud. And that has become such a value for me and a really important characteristic of the place that I want to live in. I think we can all be more aware of how we share space with others. I personally come from a family that's very aware of others and really social and really connected to people. And so I've been taught that kind of embracing of the people around you. And that's like part of life itself, is like starting up conversations, shooting the shit with new people. My closest friends are definitely all like that. You know, we can talk with anyone. We have like this open energy, and that's become something I really value. So I would also say, look at how your friends and family operate, and like, are they embracing those around them? Are they inviting in new conversations? Are they being present with themselves and their environments when it's a new space? You know, sometimes we can shut off and retreat and just be like, oh, I don't know, this is new, so I'm figuring it out. But there's something so beautiful in just being like, okay, like what are we here to experience together? And that's such a high form of intimacy, no? The last thing I want to say about creating intimacy in your everyday lifestyle, in your rituals and your responsibilities is, how are you spending your downtime? What are your hobbies? What are you investing in outside of your job and your family and your friends? And the reason I ask this is because our level of intimacy that we have with ourselves is really sometimes what happens when no one else is around. It's just us, and we get to choose how we show up for ourselves. I think meditation, reading, dancing, cooking, resting are really beautiful practices to learn how to be present with yourself and learn how to pay attention to what you're feeling, what you're observing, and just to kind of decompress your day, but also be really willing to like look at what came up for you during the day, during the week. And that sacred time alone is like, you can tell when someone doesn't like to be around themselves. They distract themselves when they're alone. They tune out of themselves just to like get through the next moment until they're with other people. And I noticed that. And I think, okay, that person really could use some like quality, like presence with themselves. Because that time with yourself is so apparent when you go out into like the world, because the people that give themselves the chance to have like a regulated nervous system, to like process their shit, those people can show up in situations and still hold like a groundedness and a presence. And I think that's so important for us to show up in our community with that energy. Not always. We can have our days. We can be messy. We can be unregulated. Like, let's be real. That's so human of us. But I think it's really important to just pay attention to like, how intimate are you being with yourself when no one else is around? And maybe there's space for you to open up a new practice like journaling. I did a whole episode on journaling, actually touching pen to paper and processing yourself and your experience so you're able to become more clear with what you're experiencing. Because that intimacy really starts within. Like, I have the same type of curiosity for myself as I do for the world around me. And so I think that's apparent in my writing and the way I speak and the way I show up, is like, I care about asking questions and getting deeper with life because I do that first with myself. And that is like, a forever journey. Like, I will forever be asking myself the hard questions. And I will forever be curious about what comes up. And just as I'm curious about myself, I'm so curious about the subjects that I interview for my stories, for my work and my journalism and my creative projects. I have that same curiosity for Mexico and the culture that I'm in, and wanting to know more, wanting to understand, oh, what's that phrase? Where does that come from? Oh, okay, these ingredients were used based on this ancestral recipe because the Mayans cooked with this, and so they carry on this tradition. And, oh, that's why people are protesting, because there's this issue going on. Okay, and, oh, how do we, dating in Mexico? Okay, these are their practices. This is how they pursue women. This is what's important to them. Okay, let me understand that a little bit more. Let me ask those questions. And it's just like curiosity. Curiosity is intimacy. And it's our willingness to see what's in front of us, what's within us. And I hope that you continue to build intimacy in your life with those people around you. Taking time to be so present, to look people in the eyes, to have a moment, to hold a hand, to ask those questions, and also create a lifestyle with practices and rituals that really honor this idea of getting closer to life itself. So let me know how you're doing that, what you discover along the way. Please subscribe to Ad Lib with Liv on wherever you're listening to this podcast. It also really helps if you give it a like, you rate it, maybe do a comment. That helps me get in front of more people and connect to a broader audience and keep this thing going. Besitos.